All right, so I want to take a deep dive. Whenever we do a doc, I like doing the decompression of the documentary because for what all of you just saw or saw earlier, or you're about to see, when it comes to the life of Zach Hoffpauir, it was a process to put it all together. And the three that are here in this screen are the ones that said, let's get after it and let's make it happen. So Claudia and Devin and Spurge, if you don't know Claudia Faust, it's like the Brady Bunch. You guys are in each corner, or you may rearrange it. I don't know. Devin Henry and Jordan Spurgeon, they're the three that said, let's get after this and make it happen. Claudia, you were given the EP. I said, let's put this together. So I want to back up to this doc came together on Zach Hoffpauir with Eric Sorensen calling me and saying, hey, a little birdie told me Christian McCaffrey is going to be in town. You should follow up on it. And why, I had no idea. So I followed up on it and got connected to Kim Freed, who is someone that you did not see in this documentary, who put me in touch with this event that was being put together. I then turned around and went to Claudia and Devin and Spurge and said, there's a cool event coming up. It was May 15th. I went back and looked through my notes. May 15th. And I picked up Spurge and I picked up Claudia, and Devin met us there. It was at CCV out in Peoria. And this is the way documentaries go. It's just, there is no formula. It's not like, here, it's handed to you. You've got to piece it together. And so I want to pick up the story from there. And let's go with you first, Claudia. So when I pitched you the idea, and then that night, did you see this coming together the way that it did?
100%. Will say at first, I kind of didn't know what we were getting into, but I think that was kind of the beauty of it. The event was really awesome. It was Zach's mom put on an event kind of to raise awareness about the Zach Hoffpauir project, which she's working on. It'll essentially down the line help college athletes kind of with life after college, or if they're struggling with mental health, to get them connected to the right people.
Like Zach was.
Exactly. I was like really emotional the whole event. I did cry a few times. Mm-hmm. And I think all of us, if you either weren't crying, I'm a very emotional person. So like, as soon as it started, I knew it was going to happen, but I think everyone had it in them. I just kind of let it all out. There were also things I kind of related to that she had talked about that Zach went through, or his friends, but it really started to come together. And I think all of us just I think we had a moment where we looked at each other and we were like, this is going to be something good. Mostly just to spread awareness. We thought immediately that was the route we were going to go. Christian McCaffrey, having him there was obviously awesome, but I think we also kind of looked at each other and we're like, it's cool that he's there, but clearly the story is about someone else. And when you've got someone like Christian McCaffrey there and you're saying that, that's how you know it's a good story.
Yeah, I mean, and Devin and Spurge, just jump in here, interrupt, interject. This is free flowing. Devin, you met us over there. What do you remember about that night?
I remember thinking, we might have like a cool little documentary about awareness, like, I don't know, 10 minutes, be done like in the next month or two, and then summer, and then high school football again, right? And I think that after watching the event and being there, we filmed probably a couple hours of footage, and there was a little bit of Todd Graham and a little bit of Christian McCaffrey. Most of what we filmed there wasn't even in the documentary because, like Claudia said, we had no idea what we were getting into in terms of how massive this outreach was and how many people Zach touched throughout his only 26 years of life. So that was a day where I knew that there was something definitely special that was happening with many, many people, that it went beyond the Phoenix area, the Peoria area. And then we come to learn it was much larger than Arizona as well. And, you go home that night and you're just kind of processing everything. And I'm just thinking, there's so much more to this story that we didn't even comprehend that night. And I went home knowing like there's more to what we just saw, I think. And I'm really happy that we were able to get, I think, most of that more out there for awareness of what Zach went through.
Spurge, this was your first doc, right?
Yeah, this was the first one.
And so the night that night, you and Claudia and I are driving back, and I think I asked you guys, what do you think? We're just pulling out. So what do you think? And what did you think that night? I don't remember what you said, but can you think back to you're pulling out of there and it's your first time out? What struck you most, and did you see what ended up being the finished project?
Yeah, that night, there was so much. I mean, I know it started with, I think our original idea was you were going to interview McCaffrey. We had all our cameras. We were going to help you out with that. We get there and it's, oh, hey, Christian's just not really in the mood for that. Let's not do it. And so we were kind of thinking, okay, well, what do we have here? And there was something kind of telling me like, okay, this is still like a really cool event. Let's just see what we have. And as soon as they started talking and I kind of looked around the room for a second, I realized that Zach touched a lot of lives. So immediately I was like, this kid impacted so many people. And I don't know the full story. I don't know how he died. I don't know, like, I barely knew that he went to Stanford at that point. It was just kind of, I knew this kid was somebody that had done a lot just from hearing people speak. So that night it was just the whole car ride. I think we were talking about it, and it was just about processing sort of how we tell that and kind of share a story. And I think at one time we thought, okay, maybe this is a 7-10 minute doc. And like, as soon as we said that, we were like, no, this is a full TV show as a doc. Like, we knew right away in the car, we're like, this is a full TV show as a doc. I don't know if Devin knew that exactly because we were in a separate car. I'm assuming Devin did, but I know the three of us had talked about it and we're like, yeah, this is something we can do. And it's going to be a really good story.
Could you guys have done 42 minutes? Meaning
Yes.
an hour. For the audience that's watching this, 42 is an hour. You know,
100%.
Yeah.
So what got left out? What got left out?
I feel like there was a lot left out. I feel like one of the unfortunate things we didn't get to touch on was kind of the lighter stuff, because like Zach definitely had this like infectious personality. Like when people talked about them, like they talked about him with so much love. By the end of this, truthfully, with the number of people we talked to, I had told this to his parents. Like, I feel like I got to know him through this documentary. And the only fear that I have is that not everyone will, because they didn't spend hours and hours and hours talking to friends and family like we did.
How many people total? How many people total? How many hours of tape?
So the three of us spoke with Doug and Shannon, his parents. And then separately, just because of different locations, I had Zoomed with Ronnie, who went to Stanford, with Ronnie Harris, who went to Stanford with Zach, and with Dr. McKee in Boston. So 4 total, but that obviously doesn't include the people like Christian McCaffrey, who spoke at the event that we did get to include. There's way more. Sorry. Todd Graham, which the 3 of us were there for that. And then Spurgeon and I were lucky enough to chat with Coach Shaw when we went to the Pac-12 conference. So 6 people, if my math is correct, which I cannot always be trusted with my math. So it might not be. So you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think 6 people total, and everyone had such great things to say about him. And I think given the extra time, you would really get to know his personality outside of his mental struggle. Obviously, that was the point we wanted to get across, because I think that there's a lot more athletes that deal with it. And with the CTE findings, which was a surprise for everybody involved, because his dad had just gotten the results back right when we were essentially starting interviewing with him. It was like that week. So I just, that's the part that kind of stinks. I really wish everyone got to know every part of Zach, but in 21 minutes, you can't touch on 26 years of life of one person. So I think we did the best we could given the timeline, but I think if we had 41 minutes, like, people would really know Zach.
And I would go even further, because I know all 3 of us agree that there was not enough dancing in this documentary, because that is what Zach was all about. And he really, his emotion and the way that he has that personality, it infects you through dance, essentially. And everyone, it doesn't matter who we talk to, because you have Claudia Six. Then we had the incredible podcast with Jordan Simone and Zach, to be able to have Zach kind of tell part of his story through first person, which you don't get on a documentary like this very many times. And then you have other family members who were around while we were doing the interviews with Doug and Shannon, who, have the same kind of stories here and there. So I agree with Claudia. I wish that we could have, if you didn't figure out who Zach was as a person, or even if you did, there's so many more layers to what he did. And even athletically, we didn't go over that he started on the varsity basketball team as a freshman. He went into high school not playing any of those 3 sports. He was a soccer player. So there's a lot of aspects, both personally and athletically, that just didn't connect to what we wanted to make sure got out there, the awareness of what Zach was going through, the reason why, and hopefully a thing here and there that people can pick up on and go, okay, maybe I have some sort of mild brain something from playing football 20 years ago. I have similar symptoms potentially. Now this is maybe a new route that I can get to like how Zach said, I never felt normal, or how Doug said, Zach said that he never really felt normal. There's people across the world who feel like that and don't even understand that it's head related. So to me, that was one of the biggest things that I wanted out of this documentary, was for people to understand, maybe this is something that they need to look into personally.
I think the biggest thing that I had to cut, for those that watched it on TV, you had basically 3 blocks. That's how I broke it up for the TV show, and it kind of flowed in the web doc. So the A block was more so his life story, kind of what happened. You get to the end of his life and passing away. The B block was more so the actual story of what happened, the CTE, the mental health. And then the C block, which was the final one, was more light. It was more so the impact of young people. And there were probably 30, 40 stories that we got of Zach, from parents, from friends, from coaches. And there were so many cool stories that we couldn't really include because of time. I think one was, and this would have made the ASU decision make more sense, the battle between ASU and Stanford. Shannon had met with Coach Graham in Michael Crow's office, and Shannon ripped Michael Crow a new one because she was saying, this school is so great. Why have I never heard of any of these things going on here? I've always thought of ASU as a party school. But there were so many great academic things that she really liked and that Zach really liked as he was getting to know Todd Graham. And they just had a story because Todd Graham was telling us, when she did that, he was scared. He'd only been at ASU for 2 weeks. And this mom of a recruit is over here yelling at Michael Crow about how there's no messaging out for the school. And it scared him. And he really liked that. And so there were stories like that we never really got to share in the doc that really helped explain situations and then explain who Zach was even more.
And it was funny because the first interview we did was with Todd Graham, and we kind of knew that story, and we brought it up, and Todd was like, oh yeah, I remember being in that room and it was uncomfortable. So that was one story that was really funny. And then something that I'm surprised that our recruiting expert, Jordan Ham, hasn't said something about is the fact that Zach was committed to Cal at the start of all this. He was committed to Cal, thought that the coaching staff was going to be fired that next year, decommitted, and that's when the Stanford versus ASU stuff started. So there's a lot of different stories of Zach and what he went through in a lot of different ways that we unfortunately weren't able to squeeze into those 21 minutes.
Claudia, you're the one that sat with both the mom and dad, correct?
Well, we were all there, but I kind of led the interview process.
Devin and Spurge shot. They had cameras, right? Particularly and so you're sitting with Shannon, and I had sent you over a message from her preaching on Mother's Day. And I said, so here's kind of the background. And it was very emotional, very powerful. But when you sat with her, it wasn't as, what's the right phrase for it? When you sat with her versus for the first time to try to get her to open up, it wasn't that easy, right?
I think that she had been burnt out from talking about it so much. We basically talked to her pretty shortly after that event. I think she made it clear that she had been very emotional lately because it was just after 1 year of him having passed away. I think that she was just exhausted from it, which I can't even imagine. I can't even put myself in her shoes because I'm not a parent, but I couldn't imagine what she'd been going through. I think that she was exhausted and kind of burnt out about it. But I think as we got to talking with her, she realized that we really cared and that we really wanted to tell the right story. I think there might have been some fear there about, okay, here's another media outlet that might potentially get the story wrong because the first time anyone heard about Zach Hoffpauir passing away, it was a drug overdose. But obviously now we know there's more to it than that. It was not purposeful. It was not an accidental overdose. It was just a kid trying to sleep. And if you haven't seen it yet, you'll find that out.
It sinks at the end. Just kind of gave it away, but
yeah,
right.
sorry.
That's all right. That's fine.
But I think that she realized that we really were there to tell people who Zach was. And I can quick get into that too, but I got some really nice texts from some of the family and stuff. she was kind of the one I most wanted to hear from, just because I knew she had this fear about it. And she messaged me and said, "That made me so emotional. You did an amazing job. You guys did Zachary right. I look forward to working with you again. Thank you so much for handling the most important thing in my life with such class." And that's the first time that Jordan and Devin are hearing that, but that like really meant a lot to me. I'd been in communication with Doug a lot, especially in like the final weeks as I was still collecting photos and stuff. And he was also very pleased, said to thank everyone involved. I got text from Ronnie Harris saying, "Thank you. That was so amazing. Thanks for involving me in it." Kim Freed said, the one who kind of connected the story together for us. Let's see. "I just watched the piece. It was so well done. You knocked it out of the park, Claudia, and everyone else. Every word was meaningful. Thank you." And then I, of course, said that we all really cared about it. And we're just so happy that the people involved really loved it as much as we did, because we poured a lot of work into it. I had family members reach out to me, and some people on Instagram and stuff, friends of his. So it's made an impact.
Yeah. What if you didn't get Dr. McKee?
That would have been really tough. Which there was some time where I wasn't quite sure it was going to work out. Just getting on Zoom, because we're doing a documentary. We need the visual. But everything kind of worked out like last second almost with her.
Who helped on that? Who connected that? Was it Doug? Was it Shannon? How did you get the doctor and the powerful words and the results? Because that's really what is the story behind the story of all this.
Yeah. So I texted Doug and kind of like re-asked him after a little while, like, is there any way I could get connected? And I think it took emailing 5 people to like actually get to the doctor. I emailed like the PR girl at Boston University, and then it was like another PR girl, and then it was someone else in the CTE clinic there. And I just somehow eventually ended up with a direct email to Dr. McKee and quick set up an interview. And I kind of kept it simple because I'm not an expert, and most people watching are not an expert. So at first I was like, how am I going to prepare for this interview about brains? Like, I don't know how to ask questions about the brain. And then I kind of thought, well, viewers aren't going to know what to ask in this situation anyways. They want to know what I want to know, and I needed to ask it simply. So it was kind of just getting to know the symptoms and validate everything that Zach was going through and how that connected to actually being diagnosed with CTE after he passed. It really all came together and made a lot of sense. And just the severity of it and how rare it is for someone with, I don't want to say as little, because obviously he had a very successful career, but he did have a fairly short career in sports and football and baseball. I mean, as I think Spurge was saying, he had started much later in life with all of these sports, yet he had stage 2 CTE, which a part I didn't include, but Dr. McKee compared it to almost the amount of CTE that Aaron Hernandez had. He had stage 3, but they were kind of borderline. So she compared it very closely to how progressed his CTE was, which that really hit home for me because I watched the documentary on him. And I would say personality traits were a lot different between the two, but still a lot of these symptoms were prevalent in both. They just kind of appeared in different ways with both of them. But it kind of really stressed the severity of it and validated the mental health struggles he was having.
Devin, when she got the doctor, do you remember talking, and Spurge, jump in on this too, because you guys had to pivot a little bit, I would think. I don't know. Full disclosure, I said, here's the story, go. And every now and then I would check in, but these 3 were dialed in. The last thing they need is somebody standing over the top of them and saying, where are we out here? Where are we out here? I mean, there were some deadlines, but Devin, I'll throw it to you and Jordan, if you want to jump in on this. When she got the doctor, what did you think? Like, okay, we have to go a different direction, or is like, cool, great, let's just keep moving forward?
Yeah, that was the last missing piece. We had the ability to talk to a coach who we didn't have coach him, who we still had a great connection with. We had his actual football coach. We had a teammate. We had the parents. We had himself on Jordan Simone's podcast. The only element that we were missing was the scientifical and the mental part of what actually happened. So we were, to an extent, preparing for what if we do not get the doctor, because you never know. I know that this doctor in particular has done a lot of CTE research and PR stuff as well. I mean, she's went out and talked and she's been quoted a ton of times. If you just go look on Twitter and search her name, Dr. McKee is all over CTE, but you never know what's going on in her life. Does she want to be on camera in the first place? Are they too busy? What's the red tape looking like? Is she allowed to talk about everything? So if not, we were kind of prepared to, okay, we need to pivot and go to either just some other mental health specialist or expert to talk about what actually happened. We knew that we needed to tell the story of what happened in here, because that was the bulk of the problems and the difficulties that he had from Stanford on. So we had to find a way to say that beyond just the parents, because Doug and Shannon did a tremendous amount of research into what was going on with Zach before they actually went to some of the doctors, such as Chris McCaffrey sent him to. They did their own research on what they were trying to do to help Zach as much as they can. But when you have an actual expert and doctor talk about it, it's completely different. So we needed that element in some way or form. But when Claudia texted us, hey, I got the doctor, it was a sigh of relief, because we knew we had the final piece of the puzzle to properly tell Zach's story.
Yeah, because that took a while to get. I remember we interviewed Doug first and did that, and we kind of were like, okay, we're gonna need a doctor. And then we talked to Shannon, same thing. We were like, all right, that's like the next thing we need. We need to get the doctor. We need to get the brain scans. And so Claudia was awesome. She was able to get Dr. McKee, and then she had to stay on her for the brain scans too. It was a loophole. I know you probably know more about it than I do at this point, Claudia, but it was a loophole to get those released. They hadn't been released yet. And I think we got them like less than a week before the doc aired.
Yeah, it was a couple days before. And it was kind of one of those things when Brad had texted me like, hey, did you get them? And she'd kind of been telling me like, it's not going to be what you think it is. And then I got them and I was like, yeah, okay, it's not, without explanation, you don't really know what you're looking at. So we have his exact scans, but without having his name on it or like it being circled or, showing specifically where the CTE is, you could kind of guess like the red spots and stuff, but wasn't super clear. We included it, but it wasn't very clear what it was. So I think at the end of the day, the most important thing we thought we were going after was the brain scans, but the doctor was way more important.
You guys have to talk each other off the ledge at any point in this, because this is not, hey, 9 to 5. Hey, it's 5 o'clock.
I wish it was some days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were saying before this, like I had like 4 15-hour days in a row, like the last week, where I was like laying, cutting things from different sections and putting things together and laying B-roll. And then it was kind of like I got a little bit of a break because Spurge and Devin are like so amazing on the technical side. They helped obviously a ton with the storytelling, but I kind of finalized that. But they got in and like the editing that went into this was incredible. Spurge did an awesome job kind of showing, he calls them audiograms. I'm guessing that's what they're actually called, but where you see the parts where on the podcast, you have the waveforms and he had the pictures in the background. And Devin did so much audio editing just so everything sounded really clear, picture editing and fading everything. And like that, like, thank goodness for you two, because I would have had 10 more 15-hour days if I didn't have you guys, especially for that part. But as a whole, I think the only time we talked each other off a ledge was just go take a break, which I think we all said to each other at some point. But we really were the best team. Like, I don't think there was ever a time where we weren't on the same page. At times, like texting the same thing at the same time. Like, really, really awesome team to work with.
And I mean, it'd be 10:30 at night, and it was more than a week before the doc was even due, but it'd be like 10:30 at night. We're like texting things to each other, still all in the same project together, looking at things. But and I look back, Claudia complimented me and Jordan. So now I need to go to compliment Claudia, because back when we did the interviews, I like to think of myself as a good interviewer, good on-air host, things like that. But when Claudia was interviewing most everyone, and me and Jordan would jump in occasionally too, but she's asking these questions and I'm like, man, I'm glad she's here. Because I mean, Claudia did a great job knowing the questions. It's just, Devin? Give me an example. Follow-ups are so difficult. Yeah. Because on one hand, you have your piece of paper of, this is what I need to find out. I need this sound. I need you to say or not say these things, to answer these things so that we have the answers from the source. But it doesn't matter what journalism class that you take. Everyone knows that the only thing more important than the question is the follow-up. The issue is not everyone knows how to follow up or doesn't know the right thing to ask afterwards. And so Claudia did a phenomenal job taking, I mean, they were almost like these half-hour tangents where Claudia is like, I found a rabbit hole, and just boom, that direction. And it was all phenomenal stuff. And it helped open up the interviewees to kind of be more comfortable with us. Because again, I at least hope it seemed like we cared because we legitimately did about Zach's story. And Claudia did a phenomenal job going off script for, I don't know, 70% of the interviews, which were like an hour and a half long. So
we were there for a long time for both parent interviews. I think we got to the point where Shannon had like an appointment and had no idea we were going to be there for like 2 hours, and we're apologizing and like getting our things out the door as she's getting out the door and getting her daughter in the car. And it was, I mean, hours long for those interviews.
When you finished, I know that we're all remote. Did you guys do a group hug? Did you guys high five?
Yeah.
Did you guys, I mean, when that moment was, when it was done, when it was send, did you just all kind of go, wow, this is something? Did you know?
I took the deepest exhale of my life. I think when it went live, I was sitting here with a bowl of cereal on my computer, and it was just a giant exhale. And we were just texting like, wow, we did it. And there were certain spots that were literally put in like that morning that Devin had added in. You can explain what those were, Devin, but I was like, oh my gosh, those look so good. Like I barely like saw that because they literally got added in last minute. And like, it was just like a huge relief.
I think I was texting that. Well, I think we texted so much. Like I have texted you two more than I've texted my fiance in like 3 years.
Wow.
Just because of how much we don't text that much, but you know what I'm saying. We were texting day in and day out basically. And like the like that morning, Brad, you asked me how I was feeling about like, oh, it's going to air today. And then like that last hour, I texted Devin and Spurge, and I was like, I get a lot of anxiety when I go to the airport, and I feel like I'm going to the airport right now. Like it was the same anxiety. Yeah. And I was like just waiting for like takeoff basically. And it was like identical to that feeling. And then once it aired, I think I jumped up and down like on my couch. I was like, oh my gosh, like it's happening. And I think we breathed like 10 sighs of relief though, because there were several times where we thought we were done and then we weren't. And so I think we did that a few times, but every time we were like at like a huge milestone, we were like, great job, good job, everyone.
Mm-hmm. And I think the figurative group hug was not until 5:30, because I mean, so for those of you who don't know, I help deliver the TV show on a weekly basis. And it's one of those things where like, I try to Hawkeye every single thing that I do, make sure everything is right. And I don't feel comfortable until it plays and someone tells me like, yeah, it was all good. And there was a point in the documentary, which I like full truth here. I did not watch the documentary when it went live. I didn't want to. I was like, I have to push this aside. I went and did something else. And Claudia and Jordan and I are still texting each other. And Claudia sends this text, oh my gosh, did we take out this part? And I was like, we better not taking out that part. Did you not see it? So I was kind of having my own freak out. She's like, oh no, it's right here. I was like, Claudia, don't do that to me. Like I get legitimately concerned sometimes because I'm like, until the show is uploaded, because there's issues on the upload site at 10 that morning is when it finally got uploaded to the Bally's delivery service. And so until it's done, like,
yeah,
I don't breathe yet. And then I think we had that figurative group hug once it got over. And Claudia even texted us and was like, no one's texting me anything. Should I be concerned? Or like, it's like 5:35. And she's like, has anyone texted me yet? No one's texting me.
Yeah. But then I got them eventually. I think Devin said like, they're probably taking it all in. And then each text I got was like, I just needed some time to like take it in. And I was like, okay, word for word, what Devin said.
Okay. So last question as we chop it up on the documentary. What did you learn that you want to take next? This is more of a question for people that want to do docs or people that want to know the process of doing a doc. So what'd you take away from this? It's like, okay, next time I do one of these, I want to do this.
That's super tough. I think we were Jordan and I were talking about this before the two of you got on, but like, it's almost going to be hard to top, which I'm not saying we can't, but I think we were all so connected with it. And so all I could hope for is that we have another story in the future that we can really connect with and like show that we care about. Cause I think it's like when you connect with the story and like you really want to get it right, then you put everything into it. Like my heart was set on getting this right, like for the family primarily. Like at the end of the day, if everyone hated it and his parents loved it, like that's what mattered to me. And I think in the future, that's what it's going to be about for me. It's like making sure I'm getting the story right and connecting with it. And I think that's what it comes down to. Every story I've ever been like extremely passionate about, it's because of like a connection I formed with it.
And I want to go back to the team aspect, Brad. I forgot to mention this. What you see on your screen right now, there are no egos. No egos to be found right here. Negative egos at the very least. Sometimes my head is a little big. No, I'm kidding. But we all had no ego and a common goal of telling Zach's story to the best of our abilities and correctly. And I think that those two things in particular, plus the work ethic of everyone else on the screen as well, contributed to what was a tremendous showcase of Zach's story. And quite frankly, what the three of us are capable of doing together, apparently. But to the point of making a documentary, it's like I've done 3 documentaries now, too many docs, and this one obviously with Sports 360 AZ, and all 3 of them were completely different. One, I filmed all on my own with a DSLR. It was my first shoot with a DSLR, like for something continuous, a long form story. And that was completely different than going and doing the Armani Williams piece last year. And that piece was like a day, like we had no storyboard and we spent like 3 months working on this. I had like 10 hours. I got to shoot everything that I need in 10 hours and make a documentary. So, and then we almost had no original B-roll, I think, in this. It was everything from other people who were willing enough to help us out and contribute to that and get like Zach's photos and stuff. So every piece that I've done so far has been very uniquely different. And so I think that when you go into a documentary, first of all, you have to be open to whatever comes through those doors, because you might get a lot of B-roll. You might have no B-roll. You might have good audio. You might have terrible audio. So you just have to take what you get. Don't force anything, and then just cumulatively grab everything and go, what can I do with what I have?
Where did you get the final word?
Yeah, that was all great stuff that I agree with things being different, and kind of feeding off that last point, Devin. I've heard this with people on different documentaries all the time. Oh yeah, this one thing that you really loved. Yeah, that happened like 2 days before. And that was basically this. I think we had pretty much all of the sound laid out for the most part by the Sunday before it aired. So a little over a week before it aired. And in my head, I was getting really anxious about how are we going to visually make this work now, because we were in the house and we shot things, and we had the photos on the floor and used the camera to get some cool shots and things like that. But there was nothing where I was like, okay, this is going to be hard. So it's not just talking heads the whole time. And luckily, we just had the right people. Brian Small, who was Doug's roommate in college, had that 42-minute and a 15-minute like video collage of all those photos that we were able to use. And then you set us up with Rich Reed at Cox, who they dropped a documentary last week on Your View about high school football that I watched that made me anxious about visuals, because they had 40 years of logged footage they used. And I was like, wow, they have so much footage that must have made it so much like easier and more fun to put together because of that. And so they were able to get us some footage of Zach. So that was really helpful. And so definitely the thing that I will know is always reach out to everybody you can for footage as early as you can, because for documentaries, that's a big part of it. I also would have people on FaceTime that are really close to me, and I would just listen to it. And I was like, does it make sense when you just listen to it? And then I'd have them watch it with almost no audio. Does that still make sense? Because it was something I learned at Palomar Community College, which Brad and I are alums of. Go Comets. Yep. It was, all right, if you watch it without listening, does it make sense? If you listen to it without watching, does it make sense? If both do, you did a pretty good job. And so I had that going on. And so, but getting the visuals right and getting like all that resources tapped into us was a lot of help.
Well done by all three. If you've not seen the documentary on Zach Hoffpauir, it is up on the website. It's great chopping it up.